Hey guys, it's Mason, and this is Wrestling in the Dark, the only professional wrestling podcast brought to you by a blind wrestling fan. And today, on the mix-up edition of the WITD podcast, I wanted to talk who will be the number one contender to Samoa Joe's United States Championship at the end of tonight's Monday Night Raw. Is tonight the night for a Bray Wyatt in-ring return, and who should he face if he does? A little bit of AEW talk as I go through the fact that AEW's all-out pay-per-view sold out in 15 minutes, as well as a few of the things that I found interesting from the road to Fyter Fest, how R-Truth and Carmella should break up, as well as a few other bits of news from the world of WWE. Stick with me as I go through it all, and let me know what you think about any of today's subjects. So tonight is the go-home show for Sunday's pay-per-view, WWE Stomping Ground. And there's a fatal five-way match that is set to determine the number one contender for the United States Championship, currently held by Samoa Joe. And the competitors are Ricochet, Bobby Lashley, Braun Strowman, The Miz, and Cesaro. Now this one should be a really interesting match. Most of the people in there are at least interesting to some degree. I'm not that interested in Braun and Bobby, but my feeling is that they will probably wipe each other out. If this was me, I'd have Lashley and Strowman wipe each other out. Just they can manoeuvre into a feud of their own. That'd be a nice big monster fight that I think could draw some eyes, and I think that the WWE would probably like too, and gets them out of the way. As for The Miz, Cesaro and Ricochet, all of them would probably be decent candidates to face Samoa Joe. Can't see it with Cesaro because from what I remember, Cesaro has been heel unless there's been a face turn that I've sort of missed, so I can't see them doing heel versus heel, and therefore Cesaro's out of the running with that. The Miz, I don't necessarily think would be the best suited to going up against Samoa Joe. I think that they'd have a good promo battle, but I can't see the match being anything that would blow people away. Whereas in Ricochet and Joe could have a really nice dynamic to their feud with the high flyer in Ricochet and that submission specialist of Samoa Joe with that grounding style. Could be really, really interesting to see what someone like Ricochet, who is the closest that you really get to a superhero when it comes to the WWE, what he could do against someone like Samoa Joe. The finish of this number one contenders match, I'd probably have it come down to Miz, Cesaro, Ricochet in the ring. Maybe Miz goes for some sort of top rope move on Cesaro, gets nailed with that uppercut, and then Ricochet maybe hits the 630 and picks up the win, steals it from out under Ricochet. That way you could maybe add Cesaro in, it'd be a triple threat. Or if Ricochet was to beat Samoa Joe for the United States Championship, you've then got ground to go for with a Ricochet and Cesaro feud, which has already been happening. So if you give Ricochet the United States Championship, I think that would actually give some weight to the feud that they seem to want to do between Ricochet and Cesaro. It's a shame that Miz would have to take the pin, but I think that he'll be okay. It won't take much to set him back on a positive trajectory. I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of it, actually. I might I might try to check out the actual match. I think that it could be a fairly interesting one. It just depends how they go with it, really. I really wouldn't like to see Lashley or Strowman win this. I just don't think that they would have an interesting feud with Samoa Joe. So yeah, I'd really like to see Ricochet. Then we get to the fact that Bray Wyatt is reportedly set to return to in-ring action tonight. Now, I'm not sure whether I believe this. It has been reported by PW Insider, I think, as well as a few other people. And I am hesitant when it comes to this Fiend character of Bray Wyatt. I think it works really, really well for what he's been doing with this Firefly Funhouse gimmick. I think it works really well as a sort of creepy promo type thing. I'm not sure how it's going to translate into in-ring stuff, especially for someone like me, listening to just the commentary. I'm not sure whether they're going to be able to put over maybe how nuanced Bray might be able to perform the character in the ring. I just don't think. I'm just a little bit hesitant to it. I think that people are really high on this Firefly Funhouse gimmick, and I think it's good too. I think I've mentioned on the show that the unsettling, creepy vibe that it has does actually sort of give me the creeps a little bit, just because of my childhood and with all the creepy cartoons that there used to be back then. And I'm just a bit of a wuss, but it does actually sort of give me the creeps, and I do think that it's got potential. I'm just not sure how much potential it's got in the ring, whether he's going to have changed his style up anymore, or whether he's still just going to be, using the Sister Abigail and the Uranagi and all that type of deal. I'm really not sure, and everyone keeps saying, oh, I'd really like to see him against Aleister Black, which is, a possibility, because Black is literally begging people for competition. But in my opinion, Bray Wyatt and Aleister Black need to stay literally as far away from each other as they can. I don't want to see them two face each other, because it's just going to devolve into who is creepier and darker and all that sort of thing. And I think it'll just bring out the worst in both characters. And I think that if they focus on, how creepy Bray can be, etc., etc., they're going to get tempted to go back down, the old ways and give him back his satanic powers and blah blah blah, and make him like some black magician, or just I don't know, what I mean? It's just, I think that, and God knows what they could do with Aleister Black if he was against Bray Wyatt, just what they could do with his character in terms of driving it into the dirt, trying to make him a super spooky, edgy character. I don't really want to see it, so I'm not sure who I'd actually want to see Bray Wyatt face if he did return tonight. Now, it's just going to be a really weird one. I'm just really not sure what I think about it, but I'm also not sure whether they will have him return in a wrestling capacity. It's reported that he's set to be there, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because he could be backstage, he could be just going to do a live Firefly Funhouse, that type of thing. Now, I think that would be good. It just depends on who they choose to be the opponent. So I would like to hear who you guys would like to see Bray face when he returns to in-ring action, because I am not sure, to be honest. I think that I've gone too far with the Bray Wyatt character, and I don't think that I just don't think that I like it anymore, and I'm not sure what they could do to salvage it for me. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think on that subject, who should face him, as well as who you think should win that fatal five-way, because pretty much all of those men are legitimate contenders. Would you prefer to see Cesaro or Ricochet, or maybe even Miz? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really interested in hearing. Staying on topic with the main roster, I wanted to talk about SmackDown. Now, we've had a match and a segment announced for that show, which again will be the go-home show before Stomping Grounds. We've got Dolph Ziggler versus Xavier Woods announced. This should be a fairly interesting match. I think that those two could do quite a lot in the ring together. It's not something that I think I've seen before, and I'm definitely interested to see what these two can do across the squared circle together. How it should pan out is a completely different story. So it really depends on what they want to do at Stomping Grounds, doesn't it? Now, obviously, I think it's almost a lock that Kofi's going to win that match. So you probably want Dolph standing tall here, getting his revenge on on Xavier for costing him his match at Super Showdown. It should be interesting, though, to see how it all pans out in terms of will the other members of the New Day get involved. Now that all three of them back together, are they going to focus on a little bit more of a, not a tweener New Day, but just really play up on how much they're going to help each other? Or are we going to get Xavier just going through it alone? And if he does, could he pick up the win? I'm actually fairly interested in this. I think they've done a fairly decent job with the New Day Dolph feud. Dolph's been cutting some pretty what do I call them? Because he's been cutting some pretty dramatic promos. They've not necessarily been the best promos I've ever heard Dolph cut, but then Dolph maybe isn't as good on the mic as he used to be. He's been cutting these really emotional promos that have been sort of intense, but also sort of cheesy. But it should be interesting to see where they go with it from here. I'd like to see whether Woods will pick up a clean victory or not. Basically, this is where we'll get to find out whether they're going to pay off on Woods helping Kofi win, really, isn't it? We're going to finally see whether that was a story thing or whether it was just for Super Showdown, and it should be fairly interesting to see where they go with it. And unfortunately, it means that I'm going to have to try and do my predictions for Stomping Ground soon, which I'm really, really not looking forward to, because I have no idea how I would book that, and it's a sort of a mystery how they're going to do it too. But yeah, Dolph and Woods is booked for SmackDown. That should be a fairly decent match, and interesting to see whether Dolph comes out on top. As for Bliss and Bayley, they've got a Moment of Bliss segment, and I just don't know why they can't keep these two apart, really. I mean, have they seriously not learnt their lesson? You know, we had the This Is Your Life segment a year or two ago, and it was probably one of the most trashed segments that I have ever seen in WWE since I started watching. People hated that segment, and now that Bayley is the women's champ and she's feuding with Bliss again, it's sort of frustrating to me, because it's like, why can you not keep these two apart, especially in talk show segments? Hopefully this doesn't last very long. It'd just be a more interesting angle if maybe they just had Bliss down in the ring, she calls Bayley out, Bayley comes down, and Nikki Cross just attacks her. Or maybe, I guess, Nikki Cross could be in the ring while they're doing the quote-unquote interview in the ring. But hopefully this will drive the story rather than just being some horrible promo segment that... It's weird to say that I'd prefer it to be like an actual in-ring angle than a promo segment, because at the end of the day, they are the things that I tend to enjoy maybe a little bit more sometimes, especially on the main roster because of the level of the commentary. But I just don't think that Bliss and Bayley have that good chemistry together, and they're really, really focused on this mean girl character that Bliss is portraying, which I would like to see something a little bit different from her, because she's been doing this for a while now. But I really hope that they just try and find a way to make it interesting, and keep Nikki Cross not looking too stupid, because if Bliss is just going to play them off against each other and Cross is going to end up attacking Bayley, then, they could really have a problem with the motivation of how they make her look, in terms of, depending what Bliss says, it might just make Nikki Cross look stupid for rising to it or for believing her. So I think if they're going to have like a Nikki Cross Bayley like throwdown, then maybe they should play up on the Bayley aggression thing that they've been doing recently, with changing up her style and becoming a bit more aggressive. Maybe this time she's not waiting to get jumped, she's not willing to let them get one over on her, and she acts first and attacks Nikki, and that way Nikki could actually feel like what Alexa's been saying is justified. it adds a couple of little layers. You know, Saxton can talk about how Bayley's doing the right thing. She's just getting ahead of the game and jumping them before they jump her. Corey can play up on how much of a horrible thing to do that is, and Nikki Cross is just Alexa Bliss's best friend, etc., etc. So yeah, I think I'd have Bayley just sort of get ahead of the game and jump Nikki Cross, and then that way Alexa can sort of get further into the head of Nikki and sort of justify all the things she's been saying by showing her, you know, look, Bayley attacked you. So yeah, Dolph and Woods booked, and a moment of bliss between Bayley and Bliss. What you got to say about that, people? Are you looking forward to the match? Do you think it's a good idea to have another talk show segment between Bliss and Bayley, and are you enjoying their feud? So next I wanted to talk about AEW. It's been a big week for them over the past 7 days, as All Out sold out in 15 minutes. That is some whopping news, in my opinion. Apparently, there was 72,000 people in the queue trying to get hold of these tickets. Now, obviously, some of these people are buying to put it back out into the secondary market. Some of them are buying multiple sets of tickets, or might have multiple browsers open to try and get their hands on tickets first. So the number probably isn't quite as high as it is being reported, but still, it shows the demand that there is for AEW, the hype that surrounds it, and how much everyone is just so behind All Elite. It was just, I couldn't believe it. As soon as they reported it, I was like, wow, 15 minutes. And I just, you know, considering all the things that we hear, the amount of times that there's been pictures tweeted out of WWE shows where they've had to top off sections of the seating because they haven't got enough, you know, reports of them trying to give away tickets, basically. I don't think that there's, you know, any solid reports on them actually giving away tickets, but there's been multiple times over the last few years with WWE where people have talked about how much they've had struggling attendance with house shows, with TV tapings, etc., etc. And yet All Elite comes along. They put on 2 good shows. One, if you only count Double or Nothing as the start. And the demand and the hype and the loyalty that they're already getting from people leads to a place where they could have sold like 72,000 tickets. You know, obviously not quite that high because of the things that I said, but, you know, even if you know, take like 20,000 off that's still like 52,000 tickets that they could have sold. That's an insane amount, and it just makes you realise that whether or not Batista believes that AEW are competition, which he doesn't. He had an interview with Chris Van Vliet that got posted over the weekend, where he said that he didn't believe that AEW is legitimate competition, because until they have a production as big as WWE, and as much exposure, until they build one of their own stars, then they're not legitimate competition, as well as pointing out that the WWE has like 3 generations of talent because of the NXT camps that are getting set up around the world. And to be honest, as much as people are going to jump on it, and it is right that they're not, you know, legitimate, full-on, you know, going to lead to WWE getting shut down tomorrow competition, they are building stars right now. There is so much talent going on, and there's just a lot of exposure going on, and people are getting so behind people. It made me laugh with Batista, because it's like, just go away, you've retired, I don't care what you think, go film Guardians of the Galaxy or something, I don't care. And it just made me realise that it's such it's an even bigger deal than I realised, this whole AEW thing. Fighter Fest, as I've mentioned in a previous podcast, is being given away free on Bleacher Report Live. Now, that is, as far as I understand, only available to American audiences, and so to any of the British viewers of this show that are interested in watching Fyter Fest, which you really, really should be. The Fight app will be will be giving it away for free on their service as well. So Fight TV will be the place that you need to go to if you are a UK viewer. I watched the Fyter Fest, the Road to Fyter Fest episode 2 that the Nightmare family put out last week, and there was just some great content in there. There was a Joey Janela promo on Ambrose or Moxley, depending on what you want to call him, and it was fantastic. I've not seen anything of Joey Janela before. I've heard of him, but I've never seen anything, and this promo that he cut on Road to Fyter Fest was just phenomenal. It was brilliant. It really reminded me of Mick Foley, particularly that King Dewey promo from back in the day. Janela had got this really emotional tone to his voice that sounded like he could break down crying at any point, and it was really, really emotional and intense and heartfelt, and it was just, like I say, it really reminded me of a Mick Foley type character, which is pretty funny, really, if you consider that Moxley or Ambrose was, at one point pegged to take on Mick Foley, and maybe only didn't because Ambrose wanted to take it to Moxley levels with the feud, and Foley didn't like it when he brought up his kids, so that never ended up happening. So I just found that an interesting thing with both men having comparisons to Foley. Janela was talking about, he was talking some mad shit, to be honest. He was saying that he's never been told that he has to dress like an auto mechanic. He's never been in some shit straight to DVD movie that nobody's ever going to watch. He's never been told what to say by a struggling NYU student, and amongst other things, and it was like, ooh, this is getting good. Janela points out that he has been busting his ass while Moxley has been, in prison, and brings up all of the stuff that, all of the stuff from his prison past. And it was just a really interesting dynamic, really, getting all of these things that you want to shake off thrown back at you. It really made me think, like, oh, Moxley's going to get really, really pissed off at that. Janela says that if he makes a fool of himself on that night, that Mox may as well kill him because he'd rather be here than in obscurity. And there's just a few other things that he said that they were really good, and if you haven't watched it, you should. Another bit of news to do with Fyter Fest is the women's triple threat that's been announced. It'll be Riho, Yuka Sakazaki, and Nyla Rose. Really looking forward to seeing some more of each of these. I think Riho and Yuka Sakazaki were two of the Joshi women, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in a little bit of a less cluttered match. You've not got 6 competitors this time, you've got 3, and it will be really, really interesting to see whether I can keep up with the action, whether the commentators can put it over right. Nyla Rose, I'm really looking forward to seeing a little bit more of. They're really putting over how powerful she is, and from the promos that I've seen of her, I'm just really looking forward to seeing where that goes. And to be honest, I'd probably be behind her because I love a nice powerful woman, as long as God, that sounded so much worse than I meant it to. When it comes to fast-paced technical wrestling stuff, I do enjoy it as long as the commentators can put it over, but A dominant, powerful woman always gets my interest when it comes to wrestling. It should be a really, really good triple threat match, to be honest, as long as it actually stays a triple threat match, which Brandy is quick to promise that it will be, which leads me to think that it might not be, but that is probably years of WWE conditioning. And then there's just a few other bits of news. The Lucha Brothers picked up the AAA Tag Team Championships again last night from the Young Bucks. That's a fairly interesting development. I don't know whether there's any AAA fans that listen to this, and if there is, you should let me know what you think of the storyline. And as for anyone who's not, I just thought I'd throw that in there as a little bit of info to keep you up to date with the stories that are going on, because obviously the Young Bucks are now freed up for more of an AEW storyline when it comes to their tag team division or whatever. So I just thought I'd throw that in there for someone like Dirty Dan, who doesn't really keep up with stuff like that. And then the other really, really important point from Fyter Fest, from the Road to, was Darby Allin's promo. Oh my god, if you haven't watched the Darby Allin promo, you should just go watch it immediately. It is a star-making performance, and most people that I know have said the same thing. He comes across as really intense, really intriguing. He tells a harrowing story from his childhood, as well as explaining why he puts his body on the line to such extreme degrees. He talks about how he ties in his skateboarding to his wrestling, and why he paints his face, etc., etc. And really, I don't want to spoil it, because I just think that if you haven't gone and watched it and you don't know his story, then you just really, really should. Nevertheless, let me tell you that that has probably become one of my most anticipated matches now for Fyter Fest when it comes to Cody versus Darby Allin. I just think that will be a really, really interesting storytelling sort of match. It's really interesting, isn't it, how much Cody seems to want to tell stories in the ring as opposed to just booking angles. He went up against Nick Aldis when it came to All In, and they told their story, and then he had the Dustin thing for Double or Nothing, and now he's going up against someone like Cody, someone like Darby Allin, and it'll just be really interesting to see the dynamic and the story that they can tell. Honestly, I'm really, really excited about this whole pay-per-view. I can't believe that they're giving it away for free. I can't believe that there was that much demand for All Out. It's just, if you're a video gamer, I feel like the audience at the minute is like Crash Bandicoot or Lara Croft, and AEW is just that boulder that you have to run away from, and it's just coming and coming, and it's rolling after you, and you got to try and get away, but you're going to get swept up by the hype eventually, because the momentum just keeps going and going and going. So yeah, my main thing for this is, if you haven't watched Road to Fyter Fest, really go watch it. Janela's promo is great. Darby Allin's promo is like a 6 out of 6 promo. The only thing that I've really got left to say is is incredibly funny is when I watch these, my girlfriend always walks in and she's always like, "What are you watching?" Because the music behind the promos in AEW always makes it sound like it's going to be some sort of inspirational ad. And when you've got them talking about, don't let people tell you what you can and can't do, etc., and don't stop for your limits. Actually, now I think about it, while I'm here in the AEW sort of section, I wanted to talk about Sean Spears, because I watched his interview with Chris Van Vliet, and it's a very, very interesting interview. He talks about how he created the 10 character in NXT, and to be honest, it's a really interesting story that makes Sean Spears look like somewhat of a troublemaker a little bit, but it's a really, really interesting interview, and if you haven't watched that, you should definitely go and watch it. Again, I don't want to give you too much information when it comes to that, because I like letting you go off and find these sorts of things yourself. So that's Chris Van Vliet, who, if you haven't subscribed to him already, if you haven't watched one of his videos, he does interviews with wrestlers. Quite a lot of the time, from what I've seen, they seem to be in kayfabe. He did one with MJF a little while back. That one was really good too. So if you haven't experienced Chris Van Vliet yet, get yourself over to that channel and go check him out. Because he does some really, really interesting interviews, and his Sean Spears one was really, really insightful. So if you're a Ty Dillinger fan, get yourself over there. So that's pretty much it for this little AEW section. What do you think of All Out selling out so fast? Are you looking forward to the Fyter Fest pay-per-view? Which match are you looking forward to most, and which talent from AEW has stuck out to you most? Let me know in the comments down below. So another piece of interesting news from the last week that really piqued my attention was the news that Mike and Maria Kanellis have re-signed with the WWE, originally reported by Ryan Satin of Pro Wrestling Sheet, and then later confirmed by Sean Ross Sapp via Fightful Select. It was a sort of shocking thing, because Mike and Maria have been sort of outspoken about the fact that their contracts were coming up to an end. A lot of people have speculated that they want out because they're not being used, and it was fairly surprising to me to hear that they have re-signed, and not just re-signed for 5 years. Now that's a really interesting move for me, because you've got to be faced with a choice as a wrestler in WWE now, right? As your contract is coming to an end, you've got a couple of choices. You can go off onto the independent scene, right? And you can go and travel the country and take your bookings and try and make a name for yourself, that sort of way. You can join one of the bigger promotions like Impact or ROH, NJPW, All Elite, and try and make a name for yourself like that. Alternatively, there's a lot of people that are looking to leave, and if quite a lot of people leave, they might start looking favourably in the WWE to the people that have decided to stay. So if they want to entice people to re-sign a little bit more, maybe we might be looking at a position where Mike Kanellis now gets a shot at the Cruiserweight Championship somewhere down the line. I mean, Christ, if he doesn't get some sort of shot in 5 years, then he should definitely get out of his contract next time. But yeah, we might be looking at in a situation where they will be looked upon favourably and pushed a little bit more, because the WWE knows that they're loyal talent, that they want to stay there. And I just find that really, really interesting. It just gets me wondering, who else is going to resign, who else is going to leave, and I just really, really was surprised when it come to these two, because they were two of the people that people seemed really sure were going to leave. So this isn't a particularly long part of the show, but it was just a little news update that I wanted to give, as well as just sort of raise the question of, what would you do if you were in the position of someone like a Mike Kanellis? Would you re-sign? If you, again, the Good Brothers, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, would you leave if you were them? Would you stay? Even taking out being in their position, if you were in WWE right now and your contract was coming up to an end, and you're not one of the main guys, you're not one of the top guys, what would you do? Which path would you take? Would you go to All Elite? Would you go to NJPW? Would you just try and make a name for yourself on the indies? And what do you think of Mike and Maria re-signing? Let me know. Another short one, but I wanted to talk about Matt Riddle. Now, he's been talking a lot of trash recently. Before Brock was set to cash in on Raw, he was poking fun at Brock about coming to get him. And since the Goldberg Taker thing happened at Super Showdown, he's been talking a little bit trash about about Goldberg. And I definitely think that he's in the running for being the person that told Sean Ross Sapp about the jackhammer being the whack hammer, which if you haven't heard, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful keeps making the joke that when that jackhammer spot happened in the Super Showdown match, one of the wrestlers text him and said, why did he just do the whack hammer on him? And that seems like a complete Matt Riddle, a Matt Riddleism, I guess, with his sense of humour. He doesn't really seem to like Goldberg, and I'm wondering if that's led to this next little bit of news, because Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer Radio, and I usually try to bring up other people. I definitely prefer and trust Fightful and Pro Wrestling Sheet a little bit more, but Dave Meltzer he's Dave Meltzer, and everyone in the wrestling world knows who he is. So he's reporting that the plan is now to keep Matt Riddle in NXT for a while, and he's not going to be getting a title shot. He is reporting that they want to make a big star out of him and have him be one of the people that sticks around in NXT. And I've got to ask the question, is this the best thing for him? And honestly, I've got to say, yes, it probably is. I'm not sure what they'd do with Riddle on the main roster. I'm not even sure what brand I'd put him on or who I'd want him to feud against. It's a really weird dynamic with him, because he's got this real brutal edge to himself in the ring and that chilled out character outside of it, and I don't know whether that's going to translate to a main roster gimmick where just what would Vince do with this chilled out gimmick? It just, next thing you know, you'd have Riddle coming out with, I don't even know, it'd just go way, way too far. Like, I don't know, he'd end up coming out on like a bed because he's so lazy. He wheels himself down to the ring in a hospital bed because he's so lazy, or just something stupid like that. Whereas in NXT, they've got a good handle of him down there, and he could be a really valuable asset in that sort of role that Cassius Ohno was in. And really, I do think that it's going to get to this point where we have to start thinking of NXT as being a side move, not a downwards or an upwards one, depending on, whether you're going from main to there or from NXT to main. It needs to not be an up or down thing. It's a sidewards thing. And I just think that he's going to be one of the stars that they can really rely on. He's going to be a really good hand. He's going to be really good with feuds for people coming in, etc., etc. And honestly, I would like to see him just stay down there for a while. Whether or not he ends up being NXT champion is another story. I don't think he necessarily needs it. He could do with a run at that NXT NA championship maybe, but I don't think they need to rush him in to a NXT championship feud. Honestly, if he's going to stay down there for a while, wait a year or so, let him pick up some dominant wins, etc., etc. So, yeah, what do you think of Matt Riddle staying down in NXT? Is it a punishment? Is it just that they see something in him? Is it the best thing for him, or do you want to see him on main roster? I wanted to end the episode today with a little bit of fantasy booking. Now, I've been thinking a lot about the R-Truth situation. I raised it on the last mix-up that I did. How Truth is going to lose his championship, or whether it's a good idea to have someone be the 24/7 champion for so long. But mainly over the last week, I've been thinking about Carmella and how she can be transitioned back into a somewhat serious wrestling role, because as much as I find her dynamic with Truth just endlessly charming, it makes Carmella look like a really true best friend, like someone that you would want. I mean, other than letting you get locked in a case and going off for your match, I guess that's the one thing that she's done that's let him down, which is another good point. Will R-Truth even survive past this? I mean, he's been in that case for about a week now. Surely he should just be dead now. They just need the medical examiners just waiting there, just the Bones team just waiting at the Staples Center, like, right, let's look at cause of death. Yeah, it was suffocation. He was locked in a case and sent across the country. Anyway, yeah, it's fairly interesting to me to see how they will end R-Truth and Carmella's friendship. And I'm sort of fed up of friendships disintegrating, falling apart. And it'd be interesting to see how they could do it and not necessarily have it just be that Carmella betrays R-Truth and turns on him and costs him the 24/7 championship, or maybe even picks it up herself if they're going to open it up to being sort of an intergender thing, which, again, just do it, please, WWE. It's not a proper matchup scenario. There is no reason why someone like R-Truth and Carmella shouldn't be able to mix it up in terms of, at the end of the day, Carmella should be able to roll him up and that be a believable thing if that's what everyone else can do. So I do think the 24/7 championship should be open to everyone. And so that got me thinking about how they should end the friendship. And here was my idea. So, Carmella's had her problems with Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. So has Ember Moon. And basically, I would like to see Moon and Carmella as a tag team. So the way I would do this is, at the minute, they're focusing on Ember Moon and the fact that she had her Nintendo Switch broken by Fire and Desire last week. She talks about, in her promo that she cut after that, she talks about wanting to be left alone and sit in the back playing her Nintendo. Now, I just want to put that on hold for a minute. I'll get back to that. Now, Truth and Carmella can carry on doing their little shenanigans. They can, go get pinned in 7-Eleven or whatever they want to do, Dunkin' Donuts or wherever they decide to film the next skit. But eventually, it'd be cool if someone like Mandy Rose, if they were going to open it up to everyone, it'd be cool if Mandy Rose took the 24/7 championship off Truth. So then you could even play it, if you wanted, that the blokes leave Mandy Rose alone. They're like, oh no, I'm not going after her, she's a woman. And that way you leave it as the women are after Mandy Rose for a little bit. Carmella is desperate to get the championship back for her friend, and it's over a couple of weeks she's going against Mandy Rose in matches against each other. She's constantly trying to trick her into a situation where she can get the championship back off her, and eventually Carmella wins the 24/7 championship off Mandy Rose. But the twist in the tale is that R-Truth pins her and gets the 24/7 championship back. Now, the reason that I wouldn't necessarily say that this would be played as a betrayal is because you've got that sort of craziness of R-Truth where he doesn't necessarily know what's going on. I mean, you could play it that he didn't even necessarily realise that it was Carmella, that he just saw the belt and he just reacted, or that he doesn't realise, why it's a shitty thing to have done considering she was trying to get the championship back for him, that she probably would have given it to him anyway, given it up and just handed it to him. I think you could play off that childish innocence of Truth to make it so that it sort of breaks Carmella's heart, I guess, in a way. And that way you can tell a story about friendship and show that your friends don't always do the nicest thing. That, even though you might try and be a nice person and do the best things that you can for your friends, sometimes they screw you over. Sometimes they do the wrong thing and they don't think about how you feel. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't do it. Because who has seen Carmella's attempts to to be such a good friend for R-Truth? Ember Moon. Ember Moon is, the person that comes to Carmella after Carmella is feeling the heartbreak of being betrayed by Truth, or her perceived betrayal, and Ember just picks her up out of the dirt, and they become friends, and they become a tag team to take on Mandy and Sonya. And that is how I would end R-Truth and Carmella's little partnership with each other, so that eventually Carmella can get back to being an actual wrestler. So what do you think of that, and how would you end Truth and Carmella's friendship and their run together? And do you think that the 24/7 championship should be for both genders? Again, let me know in the comments down below. And so that's all there is really for today, guys. If you want to let me know what you thought of any of these topics from today, just drop them in the comments. Same goes for if you have anything for any of the future mix-ups, because remember, these are for you. If you have a subject, a topic, a question, a fantasy booking that you'd like to hear my opinion on, just drop them in the comments to any of the videos, and I'll try and get to it next time I do a mix-up. I had a good time. I hope you did. Right, guys, I'm off, and you should have a good one.